Good morning. Let me just see if I can get the, the right camera on. There we go. There we go. There we go. Good morning. This is Moth News at the earlier time of 11 o'clock. You see, we're just getting used to it. It's the first time we're here at 11 a.m. It's very early. I had to set my alarm for 7 a.m. this morning. Like, that's inhumane. Anyway, from now on, we'll be here at 11 a.m. every Friday because we found that 3 o'clock, everybody's heads were in the weekend. They didn't want to hear about news and current affairs. Anyway, we're here at 11 a.m. every Friday morning. So if you're in work, you're supposed to be doing something, just watch us instead. Much better. Right, it's a kind of a fairly packed show. In the next hour, we will have the former Cappoquin Poultry, Cappoquin Chicken, you might know them as, the boss Raymond O'Hanlon, who's talking about a €1 billion VAT scandal. I mean, it's a chat that started off essentially about VAT fraud and chicken farming, but the stuff he told me about how Ireland is run blew my mind. Anyway, I'll talk more about that with Al in a little while. So also we get the latest on Jeff Leo's surprise settlement. Is it as good as it seems? Our old pal Jeff Leo. And sadly, the sporting world is reeling from the death of Liverpool star Diogo Jota. First, today's news in brief. George Gibney has been arrested. I don't know if you've heard of this, or you might have listened to the podcast. After more than 3 decades on the run, former Irish national swimming coach George Gibney has been arrested in Florida. US Marshals picked him up on Tuesday after Ireland issued an extradition warrant on 78 charges of indecent assault and 1 of attempted rape, dating back to the 70s and the 80s. At 77, Gibney now faces a US court hearing. He can either consent to extradition or fight it. The US government has asked that he be detained until the Irish case is concluded. Yeah, so George Gibney, very, very well known, very well respected, very well renowned. I was actually in a swimming club in the 80s, and I remember like the more elite swimmers that could, that were going to, like, I went to some competition, but these guys were like destined for Irish teams and Irish records, and they would have gone, and I would have heard about George Gibney, and he would have been like the type of person to be invited down to train for a weekend with the club. And yeah, it turned out that he was sexually abusing young swimmers, and thankfully nobody I knew or none of my friends were affected. But then when it all kind of broke, he fled to Florida. It seems to be that he was helped by somebody in Ireland, that he shouldn't have got out of the country. And then there was a podcast made very recently. I can't remember the name of it, but you'll find it if you look up George Gibney podcast. Definitely worth listening to. And I'd imagine they're going to do a follow-up episode now that there's developments. Anyway, big story in Ireland. Also, in County Down, police are still questioning a 28-year-old man over Saturday's murder of 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery, who was pregnant with her 3rd child. A 42-year-old woman arrested earlier this week has been released unconditionally. I can't speak at this time in the morning. Vigils have been held in Donadee as friends remember Sarah as looking forward to the birth of her son. The suspect remains in custody this morning, and that's from the PSNI in the north of Ireland. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that this has happened, and there definitely is a problem with femicide, abuse of women in the north of Ireland. And it was very interesting after the riots that happened when a young girl was attacked by 2 non-nationals. But since then, there's been 2 serious attacks and 1 death, maybe 2 deaths of women in Northern Ireland. And all those men who said they were out there to protect their women and children, they've done nothing. They've been very quiet. So it's just interesting when you see why people were rioting and what their motives actually were. And finally, very sad news in the sporting world. Liverpool FC in Portugal are in shock after forward Diogo Jota, aged 28, was killed in a car crash in Spain along with his younger brother, Andre. The brothers were driving home for pre-season after Jota was advised not to fly following minor surgery. So basically he was going to drive, he was going to get the ferry. And less than 2 weeks ago, he married his long-term partner. They have 3 young children. So obviously tributes pouring in from teammates and fans worldwide. And I think it's just one of those things that so young, such a talent, just at the age, getting married, young children. It's just, I mean, yes, it is a sporting news story, but just very sad. And I think everybody sort of like felt it a little bit, whether you're a sports fan, Liverpool fan or not. Just a tragedy, real sad. And his brother as well, just, yeah, absolute tragedy. So those are your headlines coming up. Well, Al will probably be with me now if we can just bring him in. We're here to unpack Jeff Leo's settlement, and we'll talk about the jaw-dropping revelations from my exclusive interview with VAT whistleblower Raymond O'Hanlon. So stay with us as we chat a bit more about the news. Al, how are you?
Hey man, you all right?
Yeah, what's up? What's happening?
Good morning, is it?
This is it. This is us now.
We're now a morning show.
We're a breakfast show.
Breakfast show.
I just thought there's not. I mean, it's an open. It's easy. There's very little. News, current affairs, entertainment on live on any of the big stations in the morning. So I thought it's an open goal for us.
What rumor has it that you're you're an avid morning person, Keith? Apparently, I'm not sure. I think you're back to your natural habitat. Maybe.
I just thought, look, I did breakfast for 20 years. It nearly killed me. So obviously,
wow.
I have a death wish. But you're a morning person, aren't you? I mean, I used to get up at like 4, half 4, 5, depending on the day. Fridays, I might have been like like just about get out of bed at 5:30 and get in on time, But like in the I'll be getting up at between 4 and 5, I suppose. But you get up early, don't you? You got to get a good start on the day. Got to talk to your people in the US.
Yeah, my daughter has said I have to start comparing myself to her favorite band, Chase Atlantic. So Mitch, apparently, when he's asked the question about sleep, he says, "I do not sleep." So apparently, that's the answer I have to give. I've been instructed
you don't sleep
to provide because it's a rarity. Yeah, that's it. So I follow the sun, man. That's it.
Yeah, sleep with one eye open.
You have to right now.
You gotta listen. I
wonder did Jeff get any sleep?
I don't know if you saw the front page of the Daily News today, but it's pretty interesting picture of you might recognize that man.
It's uncanny, actually, isn't it? The resemblance. I wonder, is he running to Dundrum or running away from the US? I'm not sure.
Well, nobody knows where he's going to end up. Even him. But that's our friend Jeff Leo, and he's leaving the court. And I don't know if you noticed a few red hotels. He's dropping a few hotels there.
Well, he definitely he definitely pulled the Pasco or escape jail card. So I think he pulled that one out of the bag.
Did you mean the get out of jail free card?
Get out of jail. That's the one. Get out of jail free card. I'm gonna close my window.
He's got one last chance card there in his hand. I don't know if you noticed that. Do you reckon?
Yeah, I the attention to detail, Keith, I must say, is extraordinary. I mean, it's very appropriate. I think the one that's missing is 22 million reasons or 21 million reasons to get off the stand, right? So apparently that's the cost of not getting your not having yourself being cross-examined when you've clearly, blatantly done exactly what they said you've been doing. And actually, the paradox, Keith, is, I woke up this morning to my phone blowing up from Charlie Taylor for apologizing that he published that Jeff Leo was pursuing us for defamation.
Of course,
remember that article, and I'm teary-eyed that he was the bigger man, and he decided to apologize. Not.
I sense a bit of. So, yeah, I'm sure Charlie.
Oh wait, Charlie Taylor. Wait, Charlie. Tom Lyons, Ian Curran. Wait. So we were telling the truth, but you guys published that we were being pursued by the guy that we were telling the truth about.
Yeah.
About defamation, and nobody's reported on the fact that he actually did do it.
Yeah.
And that he had to buy himself out of being cross-examined. And Now we're sitting here again after breaking the story about the guy that we've been saying for a long time is a crook.
Yeah.
And here we go.
You haven't got the apologies, the WhatsApps, the apologies, the letters, the bunch of flowers, the congratulations from any of our friends, Tom Lyons or Charlie Taylor, any of those guys, any of those journalists who are bang out of order. So just to let the viewer in on what's happening, just in case you haven't watched this before, Jeff Leo is a friend of the show, enemy of the show. You keep your friends close. That's what they say. Your enemies close and your friends close.
He's I guess Keith, he's kind of a founder, isn't he? Like, I mean, when you find motivation
to do
something, we have to give the guy a bit of credit. You know, he's been the inspiration.
He's our muse.
He's been our resident dick of the week since we started.
So this guy owns Dundrum House, which is an iPass centre. He owns other properties as well, hotels and stuff. He's a little bit wags, he's a ducker, diver, dodger, weaver. But he's also
he doesn't own them. He essentially was a self-ordained caretaker that took the properties from somebody who entrusted him with lots of money.
Yes.
To purchase properties on their behalf, and he just decided to take ownership of everything. That's the crux of the.
Yeah, that was the thing. He got the money from a family, the Wennings. He spent the money buying property, which he just kept then, and he was asked to go in front, and he wanted the court called him up to be cross-examined about his dealings. He basically settled because he didn't want to be cross-examined because he knew he'd be in trouble. So he settled with the Wennings by saying, "I'm going to pay you back this amount of money." Is that what's happened?
Allegedly. So the details are foggy.
Yeah.
The one article that led the way, I think, I'm open to correction this, was from Catherine in the Business Post, who we know is pretty much, Charlie Taylor. If he's not reporting, she reports. And it looks like that story was fed because it's nuanced. Now, I'm not going to disclose who I've been speaking with, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that we have a direct link into the family, and I think very highly of them, and I've said that on many occasions, right? And they just want their money back. And if you think of it, Keith, in terms of, like, I don't know the exact figure, but I'd imagine it's extraordinarily high. The money they've had to spend on top of the money they've lost to try to pursue this guy through the high courts, where he's been dodging and ducking and diving and reneging on deals and saying lots of nasty stuff about them, right? But the reality is, like, they have no confidence or little confidence in the system, right? To get it back, get what they deserve back. So, it's a travesty in itself that someone or one would have to even do a deal with this guy to just get back what you owe, like what you're owed. Like, and if you think about it in context, so even the way it's working right now, so he's had control of these hotels, he's had control of the cash flow. From a business community perspective, he's been telling everybody that he's a very, sophisticated, successful business person, and he's been brandishing himself as, a property magnate, right? And in all the while, it's somebody else's money. He's just taken it, used it however he wanted. Like, it's very easy to spend other people's money, right? And then when they call a halt to it and say, "Give us back our money," he fights them to the bitter end, draws them into what I would imagine is an extremely stressful process for them. And now he's settling with their own money. Like, that's in essence what's happening. So the money he's made and profited from these businesses, and remember that this is not being reported anywhere except here, it's just been ignored that this is actually a performing portfolio. Like, these are trading hotels, these are businesses that are generating cash flow, these are businesses that have assets. This is a business that has been one of the locations, as we know, in Dundrum, that's been turned into a very successful iPass centre, has been generating a lot of money, has come under significant scrutiny. in terms of not adhering to planning regulations, not adhering to
Of course, he
regulations in
doesn't own
relation.
that anymore. It's someone called Juanita from Spain bought it off him.
Well, this is the point. So even the property that he said he doesn't own, that Juanita owns it. No, essentially that's in the deal as well. So how is that happening, right?
Yeah.
So like when you
he
unpack
doesn't
this,
own it, but he's using it.
he doesn't own it, but he's using it as a settlement. And like he's down there every other day. Like he's pictured driving in and out of there. So like it's just making a mockery of our system. It's taken advantage of the Irish goodwill, where genuinely that iPass structure was set up to help people in a bad situation. That's the reality.
Has he gotten away with it? Has he gotten away with it? Has he gotten out of jail? Has he got a get out of jail free card?
I mean,
we don't know.
Cynically, respectfully, I just think there is so much carnage in the wake of this guy and the behavior of the entire team, and that this has been published so we can speak to it. His auditor, the guy that I've spoken to regularly in terms of John Healy, the liquidator that took over this liquidation where the assets were removed. Nobody checked that the returns hadn't been done since 2017. These are guys that are supposed to be on behalf of the government, protecting taxpayers' money, which he said to us many times. He's a guy that's pursuing, me rigorously without even looking at the facts and trying to actually unpack what happened, which is his job. He's not doing his job. And he's openly said he has a relationship with this guy. And I have a source that would categorically stand over that. And we have a guy that's now settled to prevent him being cross-examined on something that he said he never did.
So you'd imagine if someone said I haven't done anything wrong, you wouldn't mind being cross-examined. Why would you pony up a lot of money you don't have to if you haven't done anything wrong? You'd be happy to have your day in court and prove yourself right, wouldn't you?
Or you would do the right thing and actually give these people back every penny that they gave you.
Yeah, but
without them having to take
doing the right thing is a habit. Like if you've never done it, it's very hard to figure out how to.
Yeah, apparently, even when he was a toddler, when he was learning to walk, they had to put stilts next to him because he couldn't stay in a straight line.
He told his parents he could walk, but he clearly couldn't. He said, "Look, I'm walking now. I'm walking now. Hey, I'm walking here.
I'm walking here."
He's like, "No, you're still on your arse." Hey!
Apparently, when he opens his mouth, some unusual noise goes. Nah, nah.
He was selling bags of flowers, baby food to toddlers in the crash. That's what I heard.
He definitely, if we went back in time, he would remember those snake oil sales.
Yeah, he definitely will be. He'd be turning up.
I promise you, if you give me $20, I won't give you $20 back, and then I'll charge you another $20 for you to give it
the elixir of life. For everything that ails you.
It's a great deal, buddy.
Yeah. It's monorail, It's the monorail man, you know what I mean? Monorail
from
The
Simpsons.
Yeah, he's the monorail guy. He comes into town with his flashy jacket and his American accent, and he sells the monorail, and it doesn't really work properly.
It does not say a lot for the Irish sophisticated business community that they have been fed this guy's bullshit for so long, and even now today, when he's trying to escape once more. And look, we've got messages as we can speak to. I'm not going to name the people, but we've got frustrated messages sent to us saying, "How the fuck is this guy getting away with this? This is terrible." Yeah. And you could hear the upset in the voices, and I think it's just a lack of maybe not. I don't mean lack of understanding, but I think there's more to it.
Yeah,
there's more to it. I don't think this is the end of it, and I think this guy is heading for trouble regardless. And that's my view on it. I think this is just. Yeah.
We'll watch this one with interest, but the reason why we're talking about, like, Jeff Leo is an example of something that is bad at the heart of Ireland business, and you've spoken about it before. Like, we don't have a great name anymore. People don't want to come and do business in Ireland, and there's reasons behind that. And how you came into contact with this man and how you started dealing with them. Let's talk a little bit about Enterprise Ireland, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so
because I've got an interview coming up with a man called Raymond O'Hanlon, and
Very good.
Effectively, I thought that was going to be an interview about chicken farming and VAT fraud. Now, what he told me about Enterprise Ireland and their involvement possibly in the closing of his business, there was adjacent to that, there was sabotage. So this man had diesel machines and sand was put into the diesel. He had the whole like the electrical works to run the whole thing that was sabotaged. When he got rid of the people out of the business that he knew were sabotaging from the inside, the sabotage started from the outside. So he's getting chicken come in or go out, and somebody was putting old chicken into the pack. So they were like basically tarnishing the chicken. And he said the final straw for them then was when they were, I mean, he was trying to turn this business around. He thought he was operating in a free market. He didn't understand that the government didn't want this business to survive. So they were doing everything to make it fail, even though he was turning it around. They'd already decided this was, so Ireland, if you're setting up a business, understand this, you are not operating in a free market. You operate.
Keith, we sat in an office.
Yeah.
We sat in an office with the now CEO of Enterprise Ireland, who was supposed to be the founder-friendly females in business, women in business representative promoting Irish business, and told us categorically during the meeting when we had come to them and said, we need help. Our largest shareholder is shorting the company and they're going to corporate the company. And this was long before any of the issues that now happened, as you know, has been publicly and widely reported upon, were happening. And she said, yes, maybe just relinquish the control of the company.
So that was you're talking with Jeff here, yeah?
I'm talking about Enterprise Ireland.
Enterprise Ireland,
Yeah.
So you were saying we need help here. People are holding back on the money they promised us.
Rocktop, not Jeff. Rocktop Partners.
Okay, would that be set up by Enterprise Ireland, because that's what they do? They help startups by bringing in investors.
Well, all I know is everybody denied the fact that they had met with our shareholder, Rocktop Partners. They had confirmed that they were going to be paying the money. They had confirmed that they loved the technology. They had confirmed that they were going to continue investing and supporting us. And then when it all started to fall apart, everybody was running for the hills saying, oh, well, how didn't you see this coming? And you're sitting there looking at these guys saying, everybody in the DD process, the investment due diligence process, met all of the other shareholders. You guys had the exact same story that we had. We didn't miss anything. They just lied. That's it.
Mm.
Right. And I'm not surprised that Raymond is looking at this with scrutiny to say, okay, we have a significant issue where the people within our country, our own countrymen, are supposed to be helping Irish businesses, and they're not.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And you're not operating in a free market. You're operating within the confines of what they have already decided is going to succeed and isn't going to succeed, and why it's going to succeed, only they will know. But he also, I mean, the big revelation for me, it really blew my mind. He was talking about 1987, Charlie Hoy sat down with the main, let's say, one of the biggest civil servants, most powerful civil servants in the country, right? And they basically changed Ireland from, this is his words, a democracy to maybe a bureaucracy, a different type of system that people aren't really aware of. But when you vote for somebody like a TD or, you know, your local representative, you think you're blaming the council, you're blaming your local TD. So what he's saying is this country is run by the top senior civil servants. So you've got departments backing each other, helping each other. And you're talking about the Department of Justice, you're talking about the Department of Enterprise, like they're backing each other. So, and they've got this plan that nobody else is aware of, only them. So if you're, so this man started a business that was never going to, it was always going to fail. But he was working on the assumption that if he worked really hard, if he applied all his ideas, he knew he could turn this around. He didn't know about the VAT fraud. He didn't know that there was the state were funding the other chicken poultry farmers through this VAT fraud. And he didn't have that. He wasn't aware of that. And also his business was being sabotaged. He did not know until like years later, he figured out what was going on. He thought,
Keith, I can totally relate to that because
message, you know.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because in hindsight, you have to learn and move on, which we've done now, and look at it in retrospect to say there's accountability, you make mistakes, you get on with it. But when you look at its height and say, but we actually didn't stand a chance at all.
Mm.
The decision had already been made that our technology, my inventions were moving into that US-based shareholder. That's it. And that had already been decided.
Mm.
And they're just playing the dance with you. They're playing the tune with you, you know? It's like,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
they'd
saying
already
great things.
designated the successful people in the country. You weren't going to be one of them, so they're just going to kill that business and take
Oh
it.
yeah, you're up in the pedestal, and then look, you know, I was quote my late pops. He was like, you know, off the pedestal you will fall. But like, you know, some of the old anecdotal proverbs are still true today. You know,
Yeah,
build you up, and then it's easier to blast you down, right?
yeah. But the thing
Yeah.
is, you must look back at those days where you're tearing your hair out, the late nights, working hard, dealing with issues, fixing this problem comes up, you're fixing that problem, you're meeting, you know, you put your heart and soul into it. You're suffering, you have relationships that like when you're working so hard because you believe in a dream and you want to make it succeed, and you can see how it can succeed, but then you realize it was never like that's hard. If people don't understand that they're not operating in a free market, that's the message we need to get out there today.
I'm mentoring companies as we stand today, because we do continue. I do have my faith in humanity, right? So I do come across some decent people who try to help them, and I start with that. You do realize that you're already up against it, because it has been decided that you're going to fail. And those words, I'm preparing people for.
Mm.
You just think that the people around you want to see you become successful, and that just isn't the case. And you
Mm.
got to open your eyes to it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not because they're jealous. It's much more clinical, and it's
Oh,
much worse than that.
that's probably in there somewhere, but like,
But if any was to look at this, they'd think that if a cynical person was to look at this and look at Enterprise Ireland and go, are these guys there to help businesses succeed, or are they there to make sure that they are involved in businesses so they can decide who succeeds? That's what a cynical person might say, you know. Now, Al, I'm going to let you go because I have this interview. I'm going to play half an hour. It's really good. Everybody should watch it. It's the scales have fallen away from my eyeballs once again, and I have you to thank for that, Al. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks for getting up so early. Jeez, you go back to bed.
I'm on brunch time now, man.
You don't sleep.
See you, buddy.
Good luck.
Yeah.
See ya. Thanks very much. So there you go. Yeah, we watched that story, the Jeff Leo story, with interest as always. You know, and I would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky moth kids. And then he takes off a mask. Unfortunately, he's not wearing a mask. He does look like that. Okay, so this is Raymond. Raymond is a good guy. He's one of the good guys. We have a problem in Ireland with how whistleblowers are portrayed in the media and by our government. They are slandered, pilloried, called all sorts. There was one example of somebody who was a whistleblower, tried to tell the truth about what was going on with a certain department, a government department, which I won't name in case I get in trouble, and he was labeled a paedophile. These people will stop at nothing, and this is your government you're talking about. These are elected officials. This is civil service. Do you know what I mean? And sorry, they're not elected officials. They're jobs for life. They don't have to worry about things. So this is what we're up against. And whistleblowers, please believe me. I mean, you don't have to believe me. I probably don't look like a guy you should believe, but whistleblowers are the good guys. People like Raymond, like Alo, and I want to talk a little bit about Alo. People like Raymond and Alo do not have the power to change the law or to get the government to change their minds. Two people don't. They're up against the government. But yet we had the Minister for Finance come out last week and said, yes, this VAT fraud thing, we're stopping that now because of Alo and Raymond and the work they did. And they highlighted, and Europe came in and said, lads, you got to change this. So why would the government change their mind on something that they were doing that was totally cool and great for farmers, and now they're saying, oh, these two lads, now they're troublemakers and they've ruined it all for the farmers? That is not the truth. But you'll be told, the farming publication will tell you that these guys have ruined it all for the other farmers. Alo, who was on with us last week, a few days later had his house vandalized. This is his house he lives in with his wife and his children. His house was vandalized. because of what happened and because he's speaking out. Why would somebody vandalize his house if he's a bad guy? He's not the bad guy. The whistleblowers aren't the bad guys. This is Raymond. He'll be labeled a whistleblower. These guys are heroes. So I interviewed him yesterday. I put some of it out yesterday, and Raymond will tell you about his experience when he took over a chicken farm in Waterford. This guy knows his stuff. He's a serious business guy. He does this for a living. He turns businesses around, and within 9 months, all of his ideas, things were starting to work, and he just got sabotaged, and he was up against everything. After 9 months, the business was gone. It was brutal. So this is Raymond. We'll play as much of this as we can, and I'll check back in with you before I go in about 25 minutes. Hello and welcome to MOTH News Live. My guest today is Raymond O'Hanlon, former managing director of Cappoquin Poultry, Cappoquin Chicken actually, who says he watched his business collapse because he refused to stay silent about VAT fraud in Ireland's poultry sector. He is now taking on the state in court, and this is his story. Very interesting story. You're very welcome, Raymond. That information I gave at the top of the show correct?
At the time when Cappoquin was closed down, I was actually unaware of the existence of VAT fraud.
Okay, right. Okay.
I was closed down by various state actors, including Enterprise Ireland, the Department of Agriculture and Board BIA. I was unaware of the involvement of revenue at the time. It was only years later, several years later, after I had met Alo Mohan and had worked with him on VAT, that I decided, wow, I better go back and check my records and see if there's anything there from Cappoquin days with respect to VAT. And I'd saved a lot of files from 2012, 2013, when the plant was closed down. And going back through my spreadsheets, I went through all of the payments of growers, and I looked at these spreadsheets and the formulas they contained, and I began to realize there's something here. This doesn't look right, because one of the formulas I could see just increased the price of feed automatically in the formula by 200 euros a ton, and by 100 euros a ton. And that was part of the whole VAT scam, which I had reviewed with Alo Mohan. So it took me about 8 weeks to decipher the formulas in the spreadsheet, but I actually have the spreadsheets which were used to commit fraud. Only the price of feed and the way they manage the feed in Cappoquin actually ruled me out of the fraud. I didn't receive the rebate that I would have received had I been participating in fraud. So I was paying at the time about 195 euros a ton more for my feed than my competitors were. Okay. And I wasn't getting any benefit in terms of fraud. It was just, it was manipulation of the scheme to make sure I was unaware of it. While sitting on the systems of fraud, I remained totally unaware, and I was being strangled. It was only afterwards, if I hadn't met Alo Mohan, I would have never worked out the systems. I wouldn't even have looked at them. But I actually have in my possession the different systems of VAT fraud which were rolled out in the poultry sector. And my system, the one in Cappoquin, was reportedly implemented by the IFA, having brought it down from Carton Brothers. So that's what I have sitting there.
So You'll have to explain this to me in layman's terms, okay? And I'm going to be the everyman. I'm going to ask the questions of the person, because this is very similar to some other things we're looking at that with regards to Enterprise Ireland, financing startups, being involved in startups, gambling with taxpayers' money that people just aren't aware of, because people are looking at, people are looking at healthcare, people are looking at transport, housing, of course. They're just not aware of the farming sector. This whole VAT thing wouldn't be on people's radars, unless you're very much involved in it on either side. Either you're committing the fraud, or you're aware of the fraud and you're trying to bring this to the attention, or or you're losing your business because you're not willing to get involved in the scam. So tell me about the business closing down and what you thought the reason was that the business closed down when Cappoquin Chickens went out of business with you at the helm.
I bought into the business along with a partner, teamed up with growers from Cappoquin, and we acquired the business out of examinership. So we had this plan put together which required funding from Enterprise Ireland, and we were going to be able to turn the business around, because my background is in turnaround consultancy. I spent years and years working with very sick companies, turning them around, getting them on their feet again, and handing them back. So that's the kind of stuff I do. It wasn't new to me. It wasn't shocking to me. We put a plan together, and it was approved by Enterprise Ireland. We put it together with the involvement of an Enterprise Ireland manager for the area, and we were supposed to get funding from Enterprise Ireland. But as things turned out, a U-turn was done by Enterprise Ireland, and we didn't receive the funding at the outset, which was required. It was blocked by the Department of Agriculture, and we needed to have funds from the very start, but we didn't get those funds. But we kept going. We managed to make cost savings. We had predicted that we understood we were losing about 20,000 a week at the start, which was, we were okay with that. We could manage that. We could see how that could be done. But then we didn't get the funding. That became problematic. But what was even more problematic is we weren't losing 20,000, we were losing 100,000 once we took over, because the VAT funding was pulled from one day to the next. So over the period of about 6 weeks, we managed to slash the losses, and we got it back down to under 50,000 a week being lost, and still we couldn't get funding from Enterprise Ireland. Still we tried to survive. Then eventually Enterprise Ireland, at a meeting where it was left very little option but to back it, they did give us 500,000 of funding, which would keep us going for 6 weeks. Now, their little 6-week plan didn't work out either, because we had other plans to develop new markets and various things in place. And once we got the go-ahead, we activated those plans, and about in the following month or so, we broke even on our operations. So we had a dramatic turnaround with almost no funding from them. Like, the money to put in was almost irrelevant, because the hole was bigger than the 500,000 gave. They created a hole bigger than what they ended up filling. So then when we began to grow our markets and grow our volumes, we went from about 27,000 chickens a week in the beginning. We went up every single week over 12 weeks, and we were up to 85,000 chickens per week in the Irish market. Now, we weren't supposed to be in the Irish market, as it turns out. We were supposed to be export. Enterprise Ireland, with the previous version of the organisation, had backed a halal plant in the export market. So it wasn't competing with the indigenous industry, with the indigenous companies. But we developed where the margins were, which was in the Irish market, and that wasn't acceptable. And when we managed to keep growing, we began to experience lots of other attacks. We had forklifts, specialized forklifts with the electronics, the dashboards destroyed. We had rotten chicken put into packs. Various things were happening. Our switching gear, bringing in the electricity from the high voltage electricity into the plant, they somehow just blew up and fried our systems. We had all sorts of issues there. We had sand in diesel tanks. It was just one thing after another. But what ultimately got us was that we had to import chicken to supplement the chickens which were dwindling on the farms, because we hadn't the finance, we hadn't the money to pay for the old chicks. So to keep going, we brought in chicken from outside, and as long as we could make a margin on that, we could still keep going and we could rebuild. So that was our plan. But then what really got us was we got on the long weekend in May, I think it's May, in 2013, we received our Arctic load of chicken in for the long weekend from Holland. And when we opened the doors, the chicken was turquoise. It was visibly rotten. Now, it improved as it went back through the truck, which just simply told us that the doors had been left open in the heat and it had rotten from the boom end inwards. That had a very damaging impact on us at that time. So we began to lose market again. And we still managed to keep going to set up investors to come in with us. We'd been trying to get investment in since Enterprise Ireland did the U-turn, but we were well advanced with two possibilities. But again, those possibilities were undermined and collapsed by grower representatives. And eventually the plant just folded. It was the last straw. We were just hit with, it was like fighting an intense battle from the day we took over on the 3rd of December 2012 to the day we closed in August 2013.
So you had, how long did you have, how long was it? A year? Not even a year?
It wasn't a year. I suppose I was a year involved in total because we participated in the examinership and all that side, putting plans together, etc. But we were running the company only for about 9 months.
Do you think so? You were being sabotaged?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, we didn't know at the time, but that went back to a plan which was developed actually by Enterprise Ireland and approved by various stakeholders. It was the first of the 10-year plans for the agricultural sector called Agri-Food 2010. And in that document, it calls for a reduction of poultry plants from 23 down to 7. When Cappoquin closed, it was the number had reached 7. Okay, so we were the last one to be taken out. So the way that it was taken out was through VAT fraud. Well, there were different mechanisms, but the primary mechanism was VAT fraud. If you were a select processor, a designated processor, you engaged in fraud and you received the funding, claiming back VAT from revenue. If you were to be taken out, they call them GORE processors, then you didn't receive the benefit of the funding. What you received was an increase in feed prices. So what happened was that in the companies that were to survive, called the stale processors, they received VAT funding. The ones to be taken out didn't. The ones who were to be taken out went bust because they couldn't compete with the ones in receipt of funding. Quite simple. So the whole sector was brought back to the magic number of 7. And obviously we were quite unaware of that. Again, it was several years after we were closed. Obviously, I knew that Enterprise Ireland and the Department of Agriculture and Board Bia had been involved in closing us down, and some of our grower partners. But we couldn't really put the case together. We couldn't understand why this would make any sense. But I knew enough to actually gather the evidence, to classify it, to fill boxes of it, and to leave it to one side. And it was then years later when I read an article in the paper mentioning Marion Harkin and MEP Marion Harkin and a chicken grower, that I read the Sunday Times, and I sent an email to Marion Harkin immediately afterwards asking for a catch up with her. She then introduced me to Alo Mohan, and we immediately began to understand there's something wrong here. So as it turned out, it was all the one VAT fraud system. Alo was the grower side, and I was the processor side. And we began to piece it together. And I had to piece it together with Alo first to understand how the scams work, to realize that there were scams, and then understand how they work. And then after that, I went back into the Cappoquin side, and I had all the stuff I could actually understand. I knew enough from Alo to actually understand the systems that were there.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like when you took over this business, like a little bit of funding, you had a great business plan. Even as you were being sabotaged, you were still making it work. And you only eventually went out of business because somebody sabotaged a load of poultry that was destined, that was coming for you. Why weren't you? So I presume they allowed you to do the takeover for, because it would, for aesthetic purposes. Just go along with it. But this is going to fail. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Why weren't you chosen, and who were the 7 chosen to survive out of the 20 whatever companies?
Why weren't we chosen? Well, Cappoquin was taken out actually previously. MD O'Connor was closed down. But after the liquidation of MD O'Connor, the plant was bought out of liquidation by a group that were investing in the plant to produce halal chicken and to export it all. So that caused the plant to be, or to allow it to reopen, and it got its license and continued on, supposedly moving solely into export. Now, they didn't proceed with that plan fully. They still continued in the Irish market, which obviously was upsetting. So steps were taken then to close it down again. And part of that was increasing the feed price once again, but not transferring the benefit to the owners of the business. Okay, so in our case, then it's very clear from the evidence that the plan was that we would be purchased out of liquidation. Only this time, the Department of Agriculture would carry out an inspection. It would find all of these improvements that needed to be made. One of them was the replacement of the asbestos roof, which was estimated to be cost about €1 million. So there were these various items which would have made it impossible for the plant to be reopened, and a license wouldn't be issued. Okay? So the plant would be closed. But as it turned out, we bought the plant out of examinership. So the plant had the license and the plant could continue. So the simple plan of simply pulling the license, or sorry, not renew the license, that didn't work anymore. And so they were in a completely new ballgame. So they had to come up with other ways of pulling us out of business. Yeah. So it was just, again, it was just one thing after another.
So basically 7 businesses were basically being state funded. So basically you're talking about a market that just wasn't fair. They're allowing people to buy into business, spend their hard-earned money and time and all that to develop businesses without knowing the facts, the fact that the market was already fixed and that their competitors were being funded by the state effectively through this. They were saying, you just You just claim as much VAT as you want, and that's our way of funding you, and we won't give them the funding. Who were the 7, and why were they picked? I don't understand how they did that.
I'll talk about the chicken sector. In the chicken sector, you had 8 of the plants out of 23 were involved in chicken processing. Oh, sorry. 8 of the plants out of the 23 were chicken processors.
Okay.
So the plan there was to bring them back to 3. So they needed to close down 5. So 5 were closed down. Yeah, and the remaining plants you got Carton Brothers, Shannon Vale, and Western Brand.
They were the ones picked to survive.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it was based actually on a plan developed by Enterprise Ireland. Specifically, the gentleman who told me that he was responsible was a Mr. Joe Fox, the DA who worked with us on the plan for Cappoquin.
Yeah. And it was just that they were deemed to be the best chicken producers in the country and the best.
Well, if you look at it, I suppose you have most of the production there is in the Cavan Monaghan area. And my understanding is that they were disadvantaged areas which attracted more funding from the EU rather than, let's say, Cappoquin plant down in the tillage area of Waterford. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Cappoquin, while in theory, or should have been top of the list because you could actually use the poultry litter on tillage, it was chosen to be closed down, and the production was kept in Cavan Monaghan and in Clonakilty down in Cork.
So Cappoquin was being closed down because it wasn't going to get the funding by the EU or whatever this.
Because it wasn't going, and for those reasons, it wasn't going to get the funding from the Irish state.
Okay, so first, I mean, you're being sabotaged. So they wanted you to close down. You're going to come hell or high water, no matter what you did, no matter how brilliant you were at your job.
Yep.
This is going to be closed down.
Yep.
Who was physically in person being hired to put sand in diesel engines, to break windows, to ruin stock? Like, who was calling those shots and on whose behalf?
Well,
do you know?
Let's put it this way. I laid off, I think it was probably about 5 individuals in the plant based on our inability to continue paying all the staff, etc. But I would have carefully chosen targets to remove people I've been observing who I believed were probably involved. And I can tell you that after I removed a number of gentlemen for different areas, those sort of acts stopped against us in the plant. We had equipment being wrecked, being destroyed. We were working weekends that we couldn't afford to fix equipment. Various things were happening, and I believed I had a very good idea who the individuals inside the plant were, and I moved them on. Afterwards, then the sabotaging of the product started. Yeah. So that's when rotten, out-of-date chicken began to be put into packs along with fresh chicken. And when I actually went to the UK and hired in a new operations manager who would work with me to actually run the plant out of stock every day to avoid people being able to have old stock to put into packages. So we completely changed the way we handled stock and the way we handled production to undermine people being able to sabotage the product in the plant. And so that did improve the situation on that front. But then when they couldn't readily get stuff into the packs in the plant, that's when we got our Arctic load of rotten chicken from Holland. So it just shows you the progression. It didn't really matter that we stopped them in the plant because they just moved outside. We then controlled that and they moved on to the other piece. They blew up our switching gear to begin with. Now, we can't prove that, but if when you look at all the coincidences, there were just such an incredible number of coincidences in Cappoquin, all of them very damaging to the business. Yeah.
So when you're looking at all, when you're going back and you've spoken to Alo, and then you're realizing that this is something. I mean, you knew something was off. You knew you were up against it, I presume, at the time, but you didn't know exactly why. So then you spoke. You did know what. You didn't.
How would we believe that somebody was? How would we believe that the state was working against us to put us out of business? How would we believe that Enterprise Ireland, who's responsible for job creation and for doing all these wonderful things in the country, how would we believe that they were behind the development of a plan to rationalise the industry, and that revenue would fund certain processors against other ones based on the strategic plan? You know, how does one begin to put that together at a time when you're losing 100 grand a week? When you're losing 100 grand a week, it focuses the mind, and you really, you're just full on working on the day to day to bring your costs down, to stop doing things that are losing you money. Like this, it's a very serious situation, but every week we brought down our costs. We managed, well, that's what I did for a living before. So
you were seeing the cost cutting. You were like, okay, we need automatic lights, we need this, we need to less toilet paper, whatever it was.
We stopped producing cooked product and various things like that were obviously loss making. Now, one of the areas that we did want to attack from the very beginning was the offal recovery, the hearts, the kidneys, the feet, whatever else. Because all of that stuff was being put into a skip. So not alone were we losing the benefit of the sales, we were paying for the skip to be taken away for the stuff to be rendered. So we needed to get that piece up and running from the beginning. We reckoned there were about 6,000 euros a week to be gained from sales of those.
Selling the offal, yeah.
So even before we opened up, just 2 or 3 days before we opened up, we had a Department of Agriculture inspection which closed down the offal recovery room. Yeah. So we were required to invest over 20,000 euro into that area, which of course we didn't have in order to be able to open it up again. Yeah. So they were the types of things we were dealing with every day.
So you're talking about, on the VAT fraud front, you're talking about revenue. Enterprise Ireland are involved because it's their plan to get the amount of chicken processing plants down from 8 to 3. So it's their big plan, and then you've got inspectors involved on behalf of. Do they work for the Department of Agriculture? Yeah. So you got inspectors involved, and they're. I mean, were they? Well, what were the reasons they closed the offal area down? Did you believe it? Or were you like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's probably fair enough.
I have actually written down, but it was a smell that a stale smell was what the gentleman detected. So that meant it wasn't just that you could power hose it down and do whatever. It was a stale smell, and
a stale smell, then obviously he could say, well, that's what I'm smelling. So nobody could argue with somebody saying, I'm getting a stale smell. It's not like he didn't need to have evidence, unless physical evidence. Yes, so that was Raymond O'Hanlon, a whistleblower. The whistleblowers are the good guys, let me tell you again. And thank you very much to Alo for talking to us last week, and I hope him and his family are doing okay, because the house is vandalized, because he is so vocal about these things, and he's doing it for the good of us, the taxpayers. So thank you very much to Raymond O'Hanlon. I mean, if you want to watch the rest of that interview, and I would urge everybody to go and watch it, you can watch it now on our YouTube channels. Let me just put that up there. Yeah, at @MOTH_news, and you can follow us on our different social media channels, X @MOTH_news_, and then we've got @MOTH_news on Instagram, and as I said, YouTube @MOTH_news if you want to watch the rest of that interview, and you definitely should. It's very, very interesting, and will give you an understanding of how things work in this country. It might help you understand why you feel like things aren't going your way or working in your favor. That's it for us. Good news story. We have a good news story just to cheer everybody up before we go. Ireland's first clock auction will take place in the home of the Irish Museum of Time. This is in Waterford City. Over 380 clocks will go on auction, including some 31 long case clocks, more commonly known as grandfather clocks, of course, plus 270 wall and mantle clocks and pocket watches. Well, not strictly a clock sale then, is it? If it's clock and watch sale. But anyway, it's the biggest clock sale in Ireland ever. Very exciting, isn't it? Good to know some people are happy. Urologists, they'll be happy. That's it for me. Tell your friends about MOTH News. Watch that interview on our YouTube channel and mind yourself and enjoy the weekend. Yeah. Take care. Good luck.